Hey everybody, Dave back again with the next CivOps gear review where we review all the EDC gear for everyone from the discerning civilian all the way to the experienced operator. Today, we're going to look at the new generation, what I consider the new relaunched generation of the Kershaw Cryo, because it is now available in G10 D2 steel. G10 scales with D2 steel. And I feel the D2 steel is a step up that the Cryo needed to compete in the EDC market today in 2021. So what we're going to do today is have a quick look at this Cryo G10 D2, and we're going to replace this original G10 scale that came on it with a titanium scale from Flytanium. Let's get into it. We're going to move over to the work mat right now. Join me for a quick disassembly, cleaning, and scale replacement of this new Cryo G10 D2 right now on CivOps gear. All right, everybody. So here we are with the Cryo G10 D2, which in my personal opinion is essentially relaunching the Kershaw Cryo in a new time and era as probably one of the most straightforward, most effective, and best small EDC carries. I say that because let's look real fast at the original Cryos, okay? This is an original Cryo. This is another original Cryo. And these, as you can see, these are Cryos 1555, but these are in 8CR13 MOV steel. Oh, I wasn't showing you. Sorry, I was off camera. These are these original Cryos are in 8CR13 MOV, and that steel is just not really going to cut it anymore in this day and age and leave you as one of the leading EDC candidates. Now, let me also do another size comparison for you. Let's compare this Cryo with one of probably the most popular EDC knives on the market today, the Civivi Elementum. You can see that the sizes are not far off. These are both just around 3-inch, sub 3-inch blades. Just sub 3-inch blades. I think this is about 2.96. The Cryo is somewhere right around the exact same measurement. So you can see little differences in the designs, but these knives are comparable, and I would say probably the Spyderco Tenacious should be in here for, you know, sub $75, $70, sub 3-inch, practical, highly rated, highly desirable EDC knives. But I am only using the Elementum for size comparison because it is just so popular. The Elementum, of course, is non-assisted and just functions off of detent and a great action. The Cryo is assisted. Both of them are flippers. The Cryo also has thumb studs. But truthfully, I think most people who use Cryos probably flip them out with the flipper. And, you know, but the Elementum has been available in so many variations, from wood to carbon fiber with Damascus steel. This model right here has D2 steel, which is a good steel for a, you know, a sub $50, sub 3-inch EDC knife. So D2 steel is pretty much, in my opinion, a standard now as far as if you want to be considered one of the top of the line EDCs, especially under 50 or 70 bucks. You got to figure out how to put better steel than 8CR13 MOV in, and that is why this new D2 Cryo has relaunched the Cryo, in my opinion, in a time and era of Elementums. So let's look at the sizes of Cryos, okay? We already looked at the small Cryo. These are the same size. These are both the small Cryo. Here is the Cryo 2, which is a much, much larger knife, as you can see. There is a knife in between these two, and it's not a Cryo, but it is a Kershaw, and it is the much lesser known Kershaw Median. The Median, aptly named, fills a gap that exists between the small size of the Cryo and the large size of the Cryo 2. The Median started out as a Cabela's exclusive. There were two versions of it. This plain bead wash version and this black version. And you can see that the Median, again aptly named, fills that perfect gap of size between the Cryo and the Cryo 2. So that's the Kershaw Median. And then as far as Cryo 2s are concerned, there are several of them. Just like with the regular Cryos, you can get the Cryo 2s in a variety of colors, blade shapes, etc. Here's your all black, here's your Tonto. So again, a variety of shapes and colors, just like your regular Cryos. Now, all of these, however, are going to be your 8CR13 MOV, which means years ago when these came out, these might have been, your original Kershaw Cryo may have been voted one of the knives of the year. But at that time, there was less Chinese high-end competition. And by high-end, I mean high build quality knives coming out of China for sub 50, certainly sub $70. But that competition has grown, and we're in a different world today. And again, I don't feel 8CR13 MOV is going to cut it anymore. And so we're back here with the Kershaw Cryo G10 D2. This is, as I think I may have mentioned, a BladeHQ exclusive, although frankly, it should not be an exclusive. This should be a standard model available from Kershaw. And probably, judging by how other exclusives started, probably it will be. It's got your standard clip, your standard steel frame lock, but as opposed to the other Cryos, which are all steel, this one adds a G10 scale and steps up the steel to something acceptable and usable in this day and age, D2. So here's what we're going to do. As mentioned, we picked up a titanium scale from Flytanium. And if any of you saw the older video I did several weeks ago, we swapped out a Flytanium scale on the Ontario Rat number 1, and it made it gave that knife a whole new life, and I love it. So we're going to do the same with this Kershaw Cryo. With the Rat 1, there were 2 titanium scales, one on each side. But with the Cryo, you'll see that's not quite as possible, because the Cryo has an all steel frame on the rear side with the frame lock built in, and then a steel liner with a G10 scale on top of it on the show side. So all we're going to do is replace the G10 liner with a titanium, or I'm sorry, the G10 scale with a titanium scale. What I notice immediately is that the Flytanium titanium scale does not offer lefty pocket clip configurations, whereas the Cryo originally offers both tip up and tip down for right and tip up and tip down for left. Adding this Flytanium titanium scale is not going to allow any left-hand carry. Now that's fine for me. I'm a righty. I don't need it to offer left-hand carry. I will still be able to carry it right hand, tip up, how I like. So this will be no problem. The other thing I notice is that, frankly, for the look of it, I could have probably just bought a steel scale, because this titanium looks exactly like the steel on the other side. But it is very lightweight. I imagine it's only going to be just a negligible amount heavier than the G10, if at all. And so I'm excited to get this titanium mounted on here and turn this G10 D2 into simply a titanium D2. Now that is going to be a step up for the Cryo. Frankly, if anyone from Kershaw is listening, I anxiously await your making of a Cryo 2 in titanium with D2 steel, or titanium with even better steel if you'd like. But D2 steel will allow you to keep your price points about where they are. This G10 D2 Cryo from BladeHQ is still sub $40. It's $39.95 or $35.95, something like that. It's 30 something dollars. So sub 40, certainly sub 50, no matter where you get it from. So instead of just replacing the scale itself, we're going to do a quick disassembly, get this knife all cleaned up and lubed beautifully. You can see right now it's nicely centered and the action is good. That's because I've taken it apart once before, but not in a little while. So we're going to quickly take this Cryo apart, clean the whole thing out, and then replace the scale as we put it back together with titanium. So first thing we'll do, let's move our balls out of the way. Don't need the balls. We already did a size comparison. Let's move the balls. All right, first thing we're going to do is remove our scale screws using a T6. Pull that out, stick that on one of our magnet squares, pull the next one out, stick it on a different magnet square, and now we're going to switch to the T8 for the pivot screw. Oh, did I put some liner lock on there? I probably did. I probably put some thread lock on there, liner lock. I probably put some thread lock on there before. Okay, there we go. Nice. All right. And there we go. So now this knife should come apart. All right. There is our G10 scale, nicely oiled and lubed. You can see I did a quality job of that before. Let's get our spring out of there. Come here, spring. All right, and let's get one of our little cloths here and get ready to clean. All right, let's wipe our spring off. Now, I assume most of you by this point have already not only seen the inside of Kershaw's Speed Safe and how it works with this indentation milled out for the spring to sit, but probably many of you have already taken these apart by now. And that's good. That means years ago you've probably watched somebody do that already and have probably done it yourselves. Okay, our spring is clean. Let's wipe off our scale a little bit. There's a lot of grease in there. And frankly, a lot of that grease is not very old grease. That's grease I put in myself. I use this Tri-Flow clear synthetic grease. And this is what I put in there months ago when I took this apart. So I don't feel like I need to replace that grease. That's still going to be good to go. I might add a little bit more because I've wiped some off of the spring, but that should still be good to go. Oh no, you know what? Of course I'm going to replace it because I'm not using this scale anymore. Okay, so we will replace it. Now let's wipe off our liner. There's a lot of grease on our liner. Okay. And we will get that all cleaned up with some rubbing alcohol. All right, let's pop our liner off. Okay. And now we will pop our blade out. Careful not to lose either of our washers. All right, we'll get all of that cleaned up. And we do not have to take out the back spacers or the clip or anything on this side because we're not replacing anything on that side. We will take out the blade stop pin because we'll just wipe that down a little bit. Okay, so let's get started with a quick cleaning Come here, little cloth. As I've said before in the video when we were replacing the scales on the Rat 1, I truly hope that any of you who own your own firearms do your own firearm cleaning and don't have to rely on others to do that for you. And if so, you've got a lot of these cloths probably laying around the house. So let's clean off our blade. Okay, that looks good. Let's clean off our, let's pop our pivot out, clean our pivot off. All right, that's good. Make sure there's no fuzz stuck on there. Okay, wipe down our scale just a little bit. Our detent ball, wipe some of the old oil off of there. Okay, let's clean our washers off, because there's nothing like new fresh oil. Although boy, oil doesn't really need to be replaced very often. Oil will stay for quite a while, but okay, clean washer. Come on, little washer. There we go. All right, another clean washer. Okay, washer number 2. All right, let's give this scale a little wipe down. The other really good thing about the Cryo G10 is that since this could be hard to explain, the other cryos don't have a scale and don't have a liner and then a scale. They just have 2 frames, okay? And so the space that your spring goes into is milled right into the frame on the other side, much like right here. But and then on top of that space, they just give you a little piece of metal that's the exact same shape, and that covers it. But because the Cryo G10 has a G10 scale over a liner instead of just a frame, they give you this entire liner to go over and cover that space, which makes it much, much easier to hold on to when you're putting it back together. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about here in just a minute. Let's just do a very quick clean out of the pivot hole. Make sure that's all clean. We don't want any schmutz in there when we are putting the knife back together. Anything affecting the pivot is what will throw your knife right off center and right off balance. So, okay, there we go. Now, we can get rid of this G10. We're not going to throw it away, but I'm going to move it off to the side and deal with that oil later. Now, let's put our pivot screw back in. Oh, and you know what? Wipe off our backstop a little bit. Our stop pin. Okay, there we go. Oh, look at how dirty that was. All right. All right. Much better. So, put our stop pin back in. What'd I just lose? There's the pivot. All right. All right. Now, what's next? We want to put a washer on. So I'm going to use some number 10 nano oil. And I'm going to just put a little drop right there and a little drop right there. And let's get a little bit around our pivot here. Okay. And now we can put our washer back on first. Okay, now we can put our blade on, and you can see that what is normally the detent, where the detent ball goes, is also where the spring pin goes. So let's just put a tiny bit of oil, just a little smidge, just to keep that lubed, nice and wet. Okay, slide our blade in, and then just a tiny bit more for the next washer. Okay, beautiful. Now let's get this washer on there. Oh, come here, you little bastard. Come here, you little bastard. All right. There we go. All right, so that's in place. Our blade is engaged with the frame lock. And now what we want to do is drop some grease into this new Flytanium titanium scale. And then we're going to cover it up with the liner and we'll reassemble the knife. So let's take a Q-tip and squeeze out a fairly healthy amount of this grease. There we go. And we're just going to spread that in to the space allotted for the spring. Make sure we get it all through there. The whole point of the grease, of course, it's not that the spring can't operate without the grease, but without the grease, you would hear a lot of jingle jangle as the spring lays and flops around loose in there. So the grease just serves to keep the spring, keeps a little bit of positional tension on it just to keep it in place. All right, there we go. There's some grease in there, and let's wipe off the excess on the edge. Wipe off excess on that edge. And there we go. That should be okay. All right, so now we place our spring back and we cover that with our liner. All right, and you'll see now we've got our speed safe back in position here. And there's enough grease that it is not going to jiggle around loose in there. All right, so now we will simply reassemble this knife, but what we want to do is make sure that this speed safe pin lines up into this hole in the blade, because that is how they engage. And we got that there. Make sure our standoffs are engaged. Make sure our stop pin is engaged. And everything should be back together now. Right? Looks like it. So, first thing we'll do is take our pivot screw and re-engage that pivot screw. I'm not using thread lock yet. We'll get to the thread lock, but I want to keep this knife put together while we get all of the screws put in. And then once we are in closer to final phase, then I will put some thread lock on. Beautiful thing about the magnet squares on this work mat is that, as you can see, I can just pick the screws up with my screwdriver without a second hand and put them right where they need to go. Okay, so nothing is entirely tightened down. Now let's see, is my pivot completely installed? We don't know yet. So let's see how our centering is. Oh, our centering is not good at all. Okay. and there's a little bit of blade play. Well, we're not tightened down yet, so that's okay. Let's see here. Is our pivot entirely installed? It seems to be. So, all right, let's tighten this up a little bit. Huh. You know what? I wonder if that pivot is entirely installed. It may, in fact, not be. So, okay. Let's figure out exactly what the problem is here. We may have, what the issue may be, is that we may have picked up this knife while it was disassembled and allowed the pivot to fall out of its position. Let's make sure our pivot is entirely installed. And it is now entirely pushed in. Okay. Let's put our last rear standoff in. All right. And now let's try this again while we hold pressure on the pivot from underneath. All right, our speed safe spring is in. Our pivot's engaged. But something's missing here. It's not going all the way through the liner. That is an issue. Okay. It's because our blade is not fully down. Let's see. All right, speed safe spring is in. All right. That should be what we're looking for. Okay. Pivot's all the way in. Now let's try it again. See if we can get this back to being as centered as it was before we took it apart to replace the scale. Okay. Put our body screws in. And number 2. All right, there we go. All right, so now before we tighten anything down, let's see where we are now. Yes, we're back to being basically centered, which is always somewhat impressive to me, and I'll tell you why. On a cheaper, like this model is, frame lock knife, it always impresses me when the pressure from the frame lock doesn't automatically push your blade off center. I always think that's a sign of pretty quality design and craftsmanship, because it would be very, very easy to have a pivot weak enough that the pressure from your frame lock would just push your blade off center, and that does happen in some cases. But right here, let's see. There's a minimal, certainly no up and down blade play, but a minimal amount of side to side. So we'll just tighten that up just a little bit. Let's see now. We're still nicely centered. There's no blade play any longer. Centering is on. Centering looks good. And still no. Okay. So we should be good there. We'll tighten down these body screws. All right. Centering is still good. Oh, A little bit too tight now. Tightened it a little bit too much. Okay, but now that it's all held together, what I want to do is back this pivot out, this pivot screw out, and I want to put a little bit of thread lock on there. Because now when I find the exact right spot again, I want it to stay. Okay. Blade play, centering, tiniest little bit tighter, action is still good. No blade play at all, certainly no up and down. The frame lock is very effective, certainly no up and down blade play. Side to side, gone, centering, on. And there we go, we got it. We found the magic balance. Now we'll take our cloth and we'll wipe this blade down so it looks nice. Might do a little sharpening job on this bad boy later. You know, a little sharpening job. You know, you don't want any dull jag-off blades. Dull jag-offs. You know, we could put a nice little mirror edge on this guy in D2. That shouldn't be a problem. And, you know, the beautiful thing is that there was a while, as a former Kershaw collector of all Kershaws, where the last thing you wanted to see was this stamp that said China. But, you know, again, we talk about this time and age and era of EDC knives that we're in, where that stamp of China no longer means anything unacceptable. Some of the very best EDC knives on the market today are coming out of China. So, you know, all of us want to buy, you know, USA made, but when you're looking at a sub 40, sub 50, sub $70 knife with D2 steel, you know, a lot of that's coming out of China. So there we go. The Kershaw Cryo, which is no longer G10, but this is the G10 D2 model, with a Flytanium titanium scale installed. Perfect action, blade's still very sharp, no blade play, and the centering's on. There we go. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Go grab yourselves one of these new upgraded Kershaw Cryos right now. And if you want to throw some Flytanium on there, I think probably I'm going to get one of the carbon fiber scale versions as well, because I think that would be pretty cool. So I'll look into that soon, but I'm a titanium fan, so I'm happy to have this. And this is going to ride in my pocket for a little bit. Now, let's compare real fast. Now somebody tell me Civivi Elementum still owns the EDC market for basically the same money, although twice the money when you add the titanium scale. For basically the same money, you've got an assisted D2 blade coming out of Kershaw. And, you know, of course, the price jumps double when you add in Flytanium. But even if you're happy with the G10, you just can't tell me any longer that Civivi is still owning Kershaw. Because, you know, now with the invention, with the existence of zero tolerance, Kershaw is really not doing a lot of its own high-end USA made blades. A couple of the Lynx, a couple of the Dividends, the bare knuckles, but other than a few series like that, Kershaw is really focused on Chinese import EDC knives. And you know, now that they've stepped up the Cryo to D2 with this Hinderer design, I don't know how you can tell me anymore that Civivi owns them anymore. What do you guys think? Hit me up in the comments. Let me know. Civivi or the new Kershaw Cryo D2. Thanks for watching. See you guys all on the very next CivOps Gear.